And now we turn to the certificate program, and with great delight that our certificate grads are here with us today, and that all of the rest of you have come to celebrate them and learn from them. I begin by introducing you to the dean of the certificate program. It's a certificate in process thought and practice. And the dean is Chris Hughes, whom we have had as a presenter here before. Chris is a remarkable, multi-talented man. He has displayed amazing prowess in program development, mentoring, and organizing. And he has distinguished himself as an award-winning Canadian educator, who has also created teaching materials to bring process thinking to a wider audience. Chris came to Canada from the UK in 1975, so he earned his BA in psychology first in the UK at Durham University, and then he studied later at the University of Calgary in Canada, where he earned a Bachelor of Education with a major in science. One of the things you know quickly about Chris, if you get to know him, is that he is a prodigious learner. He has continued to study all through his life, taking courses and engaging in research and experimental theology, and studying philosophy at the University of Calgary. So he has been at Durham University, McMaster in Canada, and the University of Calgary. What's most important about Chris is he's just a good guy. And because he's a good guy, he spent years teaching and being with, supporting, helping to grow the people with whom he worked. Chris's early teaching was with young people who were identified at risk, and then he taught high school math and physics for 30 years. And then later he was a mindfulness instructor with the British Mindfulness in Schools project. And he taught mindfulness both to students and teachers. Chris still lives in Calgary, and he describes himself as always looking forward to that brief pause between the end of one ski season and the start of the next. We know something about his love of skiing from some things he's shared recently. He shared a touching poem with Process Explorations about a skiing buddy. We know now that Chris is not only all of the things that I've said, but he's also a poet and an artist, and he is beloved by the people in the certificate program and by me. Thank you so much, Chris.
Thank you. Thank you, Mary Elizabeth. That was a very generous introduction, and it's wonderful to be here on Process Explorations again. And welcome to grad, everybody. Welcome faculty, welcome graduating students, and welcome to all the normal members of the Process Exploration community. Welcome all of you. Students and faculty, you guys worked so hard over the year to create a loving, caring community of process thinkers and activists. Congratulations. And again, thank you, Mary Elizabeth, for hosting this today. I'm going to ask everybody to go gallery view for a second. So if you can flip your screen to gallery view, I'm going to do the same. And if all the students could raise a hand and just indicate who you are. So if all the graduates, and if everybody else could put their hands together, we'll give them all a big visual round of applause for what they've achieved over the last year. It's been a fantastic effort. Congratulations, all of you. Today's main event is the presentations of the 2025 Springboard projects. And for me, this was a privilege and a pleasure to be involved in the projects. I shared the ideas for the projects somewhere around, I don't know, the middle of the year, August or something like that. And I know how much work and effort. Yeah, so the main event is to share over the next hour these really amazing projects. I mean, people put their heart and soul into these projects. They represent an amazing amount of scholarship. In many cases, they represent a deep concern for communities in which these projects are going to take a life over the following year and even years in some cases. I'm going to run through the title of these projects quickly so guests and other students have an idea of what's coming up, and then we'll jump right into the presentations. The Springboard projects are going to be presented sequentially, and this is just alphabetical. So there's no prioritizing other than the first letter of your surname. So Zhenbao, I'm very sorry, but you're last again. You must be used to this, at least in North American presentations. So anyway, let me run through the presentation so you have an idea of what's going up. First of all, Andrew Brindle, and his Springboard is entitled Echoes of Flow. Second, Christy Byers. The title of her Springboard is Applying Whiteheadian Process Philosophy to Elementary Science Teachers' Education. Third up is Dennis Coffey. His presentation is entitled Every Rock Tells a Story, a Whiteheadian Process Philosophical Interpretation. Then Brian Cromer. His Springboard is entitled Becoming Together, a congregational immersion in process theology. Following that, Bill Gaynor, Crossing Whitehead and Jenlin. Then Monty Johnson, Towards an Eco-Civilization. Then Johannes Jorg, who's joining us from Germany, Ontological Processing and Its Closure. Following that, Katie McNeil, The Ontology of the Divine, Sensing and the Superjet. Then we have Ronnie Schwartz. Her localization project is in a high school LGBTQ plus club in Basehor, I'm sorry if I'm incorrectly pronouncing that, Linwood School District. George Strawn will then present on process and programming, followed by Ying He, Dreams as Process, and then Zhenbao, Meditation and the methodology the methodology of process philosophy. And as I said, I'm overwhelmed by the heartfelt enthusiasm, energy, creativity, and scholarship that went into these projects. We'll start the presentations now. I'll introduce each presenter. Richard Livingston is standing in his office somewhere with a big gong. And when you have 30 seconds of time remaining, he'll hit his gong so that you have time just to wrap up before we move on to the next presenter. If you could, please do stick within this 5-minute time limit. We want to have 15 minutes left at the end for discussions and questions from the broader group. So without more ado, I'm going to turn this over to Andrew Brindle with Echoes of Flow. Andrew, take it away.
Hello. Hope my microphone is working okay. So for my project, I collected together some micro poetry or haiku that I've been writing. I've been writing haiku for quite a few years now, and I combine that with photography. The photography that I take are from the local environment, the natural settings where I find myself. I'm based in Taiwan, and I live by the ocean, kind of outside of Taipei, and I use scenes from the environment, and I connect that with poetry, and I've been inspired by the program and by aspects of of Whitehead. And yeah, I've been publishing that mostly on social media. Occasionally I publish, but it was never really my intention to publish. I'm happy just to put it on social media and see what kind of interactions I get with that. But for the project, both Jay and Kathleen suggested that I build a website. And so I've been putting together different pieces that I've collected, and I built a website of these haiku and images, and I put together probably about 100 pieces so far, but I think it's something that I want to continue doing. I've found the program very very inspiring, and perhaps if I could share a screen with you. I'm not very familiar with Zoom. I only use it for this program, but let me see if I can share a screen. So the website is there if you ever wanted to have a look or browse through the different things that I've done. So yeah, most of the images are from the from my local area. I don't know if how many of you have been to Taiwan. Often it's quite a crowded, quite densely populated country, but I also find there's a lot of beauty here, a lot of environmental beauty, and I found process thought, and the writings of Whitehead quite inspirational. Especially combining that with nature and the haiku that I write. So yeah, I'd like you, if you have a minute, just have a browse through that website and have a quick look at what I've been doing. Yeah, I think that's it. I'll stop there. I've probably not done 5 minutes, but I think I'll stop. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew, very much. I loved your haiku and the images that came with them, and I encourage everybody here to visit Andrew's website and enjoy them too. Thanks, Andrew. Christy Byers, if you're ready. Christy's title is Applying Whiteheadian Process Philosophy to Elementary Science Teachers' Education. Go ahead, Christy.
Okay, great. Am I sharing my screen?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay. Slideshow. Hi, so I've been a professor at George Mason University for a while now and have decided to apply. Well, you'll see, I'll tell a little story here. So I've been teaching in the elementary teacher education program for several years, and pre-service elementary teachers or people who want to be elementary teachers often have some anxiety, a lot of anxiety about teaching science. Which is similar with math. They feel disconnected from science. It's just a collection of random facts. How am I going to teach this thing? I don't have enough content knowledge, et cetera, et cetera. And so my colleague and I have tried out this incorporating wonder, this wonder project, where students just go out into nature and just find something that captures their interest, and anything they wonder about, they do a journal entry about it. And then they choose one of these topics to present kind of like a science fair project at the end of the year. And so all with the aim of, helping teachers feel more connected and more comfortable teaching science. But um, the slide is to show that there was something that was magical that was happening every time they talked about their experiences with this project and with wonder. And so I found that there was something about wonder and these projects that promotes experiences that really seem to require a more expansive metaphysical understanding of the nature of nature. So we started out wanting teachers to be more connected to science, but then suddenly they were feeling all this joy, connection to one another, connection to themselves, connection to nature and the world, this vitality, the courage to take on teaching, well-being, and like and a lot of them talked about this wonder process, like suddenly be allowed, but it was something that they had felt all along. It was in the background, much more common in childhood. And so this led me to like look for a metaphysics that could like explain what the heck was going on with wonder. And so eventually I came to Whitehead and came to study his philosophy of organism. This program has helped me so much, but it wasn't my first step on this journey. And it won't be my last, but I have as my project, my eventual long-term project is to really use Whiteheadian metaphysics to make better sense of wonder. But in the meantime, in this course that I've been teaching, for this final project for this certificate program, I've reworked the course in an attempt to fully embody Whitehead's philosophy of organism, in particular aesthetic and felt experience as primary, that there's a rhythm of learning, romance, precision, and generalization, science as participatory, not separate. You're not separate, like where you receive, you're actually participating, learning and living as becoming in relation, and the world and nature understood in terms of lively, dynamic organism rather than the static mechanism. And so three areas where I'm applying. So I created my course syllabus. I'm teaching again coming up this next Tuesday. And these are three areas where I'm incorporating the metaphysics in practice. The rhythm of learning. So we do the 5E approach, explore before explain, which the romance goes along with engage and explore. The precision is like so everybody has an opportunity to always participate in science. They explore things before they receive an explanation, and then the precision, and then the generalization elaborate. So this is just the structure of the course itself, where the future teachers are actually engaging in science. They do these wonder and eco journals. They notice, they attend, and they feel the natural processes in their environments. And they come to understand themselves as included as subjects, superjects, active participants in the ongoing becoming of the world. And we do things like this science socio-emotional check-ins where we allow feeling into the teaching of science. Like, how are you feeling today? How does that relate to, for example, are you feeling like a solid, liquid, or a gas? Are you feeling like you're melting? Are you feeling like you're bouncing all over the place like a gas? And then also constant integration of aesthetic, value, and emotional dimensions of everyday living that's allowed in science. That translates to making art, poetry, feeling the emotional aspects of scientific processes, shared storytelling, community building events. And this whole approach that I'm taking, I'm not teaching Whitehead to my students. I'm not saying, well, Whitehead said this and Whitehead said that. I am teaching as if his metaphysics was true. So, for example, so we experimentally inhabit a worldview in which nature is alive, inherently relational, and infused with value and purpose. And for example, oh, there's my gong. So for example, there's I will ask the students to go outside and take a picture of something that's speaking to them. And then we share the photos and what the thing was speaking to them, like how it captured their attention, and as if it was infused with value and purpose, as if it was alive. And so I shared this little summary of like what these seeds might be saying. Oh, look how wonderfully sunny it is today, how it makes my fluff shimmer and sparkle and tingle. I feel amazing. I'm energized. I'm ready for the wind, ready to fly across the hills, and maybe I'll land somewhere beautiful and set down some roots. I'm ready to soar. So this whole as if metaphysics. And so we just treat as if the students are in the process of becoming, as if nature is alive and not dead. That's it. Thank you.
Christy, thanks so much for that. I mean, I was a science teacher, and I think if I'd been taught by you and I'd learned a different way of seeing the world, I would have taught science differently. I think your work is incredibly important. Thank you for sharing it with us briefly. Okay, Dennis. Dennis, you're up next. Dennis, his springboard project is entitled "Every Rock Tells a Story: A Whiteheadian Process Philosophical Interpretation." Go ahead, Dennis.
Well, just to start off, I'd like to thank the instructors, and I'd like to thank my fellow students, but I would especially like to thank Josh Hogans, because the essay that I was able to write for his class allowed me to understand myself better as a nature mystic. So big shout out to Josh for letting me do that. I'm going through this program a second time. Last year I wrote on Ralph Waldo Emerson as a de facto process philosopher. And, you know, that was, I felt like I wasn't fluent enough in process philosophy. So I wanted to do it again. And I don't think I'll do it a third time. I'll just, you know, do some readings and attend some of the seminars that the Cobb Institute offers. I wrote a series in another program. I wrote a series of essays, 9 essays for a project, for a degree. And to write these essays, I spent about a year on a local biosphere called Grandfather Mountain. It's an official biosphere. And I would go up there and I would spend a day at a time and just sitting and allowing, you know, myself to become, you know, very much interrelated with my surroundings. And it was a very rewarding experience. And one of the essays, and when I was trying to think of what should I do for this springboard project, I talked with Kathleen, and I owe her a big thanks. She suggested I write some of these essays from a Whiteheadian perspective. And so I said, yeah, that's a pretty good idea. And Chris approved it. And so I decided one of my favorite essays was on rocks. And I don't know why in the world I've always been fascinated by rocks. Even as a very young person, I've been fascinated by rocks. And so I decided, you know, well, I'll give it a try. And that's what I did. I wrote it from this perspective of Whitehead. One of the things that kept bothering me as I was rewriting it is I don't want to forget the, you know, I could dig it down into the details, which I did, but I don't want to forget the beauty of what I saw. Sometimes, you know, I've looked at the analogy of, you know, looking at a candle and the light burning, and what do you want to get from that? Do you want to analyze, you know, the wick burning very quickly and forget about the light, or an artist or a poet, you know, creating a poem and, you know, look at the detail and lose sight of what was produced. And so I found myself after I had written this essay, and I was thinking about it, you know, for quite some time, that maybe I did tend to forget the beauty of of what I saw up on that mountain without digging analytically into what I was seeing. But I appreciated, you know, doing it from both perspectives. There was a particular rock up there that commanded my attention. And it was the big rock, and this is in the essay, and I'll share this essay with anybody who wants to see it. There was a big rock up there, which I named the Sentinel Rock. And every time I got ready to go into the biosphere, there was a Sentinel Rock waiting on me. This past summer, I was going to go visit, and it was so crowded, I couldn't get anywhere near it. But I looked up and I saw the Sentinel Rock, and I felt the Sentinel Rock was, you know, communicating with me. But I couldn't get there. And, you know, we were in a relationship, which is really important from a Whiteheadian perspective. So I had to turn around and leave. And I've got a timer here, but one of the things that I came across, which really made a lot of sense to me, in this is something that Whitehead said. He said, a merely well-informed man is the most useless bore on God's earth. So that's true. I don't want to be just a series of facts. I want to look at it holistically. I want to embrace it. One final thing, I know I'm running out of time here. One final thing is when I wrote my essay, I thought a good idea would be to include a glossary of terms. And so I did include a glossary of terms to help, in the reading of this essay. And I had 4 clusters of terms. And I think, that was, I think that was very wise, that I do that. One final thing that I go back to my childhood and I wrote about this. There was a rock that I always climbed to up on the mountain and I'd hide under it. And I called it Buzzard's Roost. And after 50, 60 years, I'm still in communication with that rock. You don't forget, that communication. And, I mentioned in this, maybe it's quantum entanglement from a physics standpoint, but I'm still very much entangled with that rock. It's very important to me, as all rocks are. So I see that I'm out of time. Last year I ran way over time. I'm sorry, Richard. Okay, thank you very much. And once again, thanks to my fellow classmates and my instructors.
Thank you, Dennis. I really appreciated that. And I would encourage anybody to get a copy of Dennis's essay. It gives you a different feeling of what it's like to be in the mountains amongst the rocks. Thanks again, Dennis. Moving on here, Brian Cromer is next. The title of Brian's springboard is Becoming Together, a Congregational Immersion in Process Theology. Go ahead, Brian.
Hi, everyone. I'm Pastor Brian Cromer, and I lead a small, predominantly LGBTQ congregation here in upstate South Carolina. We have a little bit different church structure from most in that a lot of people have been harmed by the church, and so we try to create opportunities outside of the church building for people to participate and find community. On our first Sunday, we have a detailed sort of Bible study, or not necessarily just the Bible, but maybe scripture or sacred text. The second week is focused on a social event. The third Sunday is worship. The fourth Sunday is community service. And so what I wanted to do in this context for my congregation was to introduce process thought into this context, and really for 3 pastoral theological aims. And one is healing, just that a lot of people in the congregation have been harmed by portrayals of God as controlling, punitive, unresponsive. I think a process understanding really helps people towards healing and renewed trust in the divine. Also to create a sense of belonging, and I think process thought does that by affirming that all creation participates in God's unfolding life. And then also to give people hope. And I think especially now where the LGBT community is under attack, the current administration, that they need to have hope in this world where suffering and injustice persist. And I think process theology offers that, rooted not in denial, but in God's continual work of transformation. So each month we have a different theme. And so for March of this year, our theme is going to be process theology. And I'm going to cover 4 core themes, and that's God in relationship, becoming and change, persuasive love, and co-creation and transformation. And then we have 4 different activities that we're going to be doing over the course of the month. Week 1 is going to be a Bible study, and we're going to focus on the text of John 15. And thanks to Leslie for helping me find some of these verses. And so this metaphor of I am the vine, you are the branches that Jesus talks about. And I think that's a good metaphor to think about this theme of God in relationship and the theological aim of belonging. The second, and so we have some discussion that we'll have in that regard, and then a concluding meditation. The second week is going to be community building. This is going to have the theme of concrescence and becoming and change, with the theological aim of healing and hope. And I found some great resources on the Process Thought website, and an article on concrescence and God. And so what we'll do is we'll invite people to read these. They're very, very short before they come to the class. And then what we're going to do is have some journaling time where people will be able to, what's the article? Sorry. People will be able to sort of write in journals and sort of talk about how they have maybe been harmed by faith. And then what we'll do after that is, after people have a chance to sort of share their story, and then also write notes on a note card about what other people might have said. And then we'll try to create sort of a communal poem. as a result of that and weaving those stories together. So that's the second week. The third week is our engaged worship, where our theme is God's persuasive love, with the theological aim of promoting belonging, healing, and hope. So through the sermon, through the music that we choose, we'll sort of reinforce those particular elements. And so for that text, I'm going to focus on the prodigal son and look at the father as sort of God's lure towards persuasive love as the very heart of God's power. And so here's you sort of see the bulletin I've already put together that we'll have in that regard in our scriptural text. And there's lyrics. And then the final week, what we're going to do is to have a community service project that'll be a collaborative arts workshop, and this will be open to the broader LGBTQ community. And we'll have resources and materials for people to come and sort of create. And this sort of the theme here is co-creation and transformation with the theological aim of belonging, healing, and hope. And so we'll have an opportunity for people to come and to create sort of an individual work, but then also to take a part of their work and then to make a larger mixed media artwork that then will sort of have somehow represent that, and then we'll be able to share that later, this communal art project. So that is my project that I'm excited to be doing in March of this year.
Brian, thank you so much for sharing that. I can't wait to hear how it goes in March. Maybe you can let me know and give me a little bit of feedback. I hope the work you've done here could be shared with other churches and other communities who might want to copy it and put it into practice. I think you did a fantastic job with this, and good luck with it. I hope it goes well. I'm sure it will. Okay, next up is Bill Gaynor. And Bill Gaynor is going to talk about crossing Whitehead and Jenlin. I won't speak for him because he speaks so eloquently about the way these two thinkers cross, both coming out of speaking from the same kind of insights, but in very different ways. So, Bill, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you so much, Chris. So I'm a social worker and therapist in Toronto, and I'm doing my springboard project with Greg Walkerton, who's a philosopher and academic and working in the area of environmental studies in Sydney, Australia. We're both deeply embedded in the philosophy and its applications of Eugene Jenlin, who and we've integrated that into our own lives and into our professional work. Jenlin has deep roots in Whitehead and carried it forward in the area of implicit experiencing and how implicit experiencing functions in thinking and perception, and how symbolization, how we can enhance our deep experiencing of life and engagement in life by symbolizing implicit experiencing, as well as how philosophy and creating theory can be enhanced in these ways. So our project was exploring this intersection, both of us, and then also supporting a rich exchange between the Whitehead and the Jenlin communities. And in aid of that, Greg wrote a brilliant scoping paper in the foundation course in our certificate program. He expanded it, and it provided a really helpful orientation for a study group, a Whitehead Jenlin study group that brought into dialogue members of the Jenlin community from, they're all members of the International Focusing Institute, with the Education Council in the Cobb Institute and the Center for Process Studies. So we've been meeting for an hour and a half every 2 weeks since mid-October, and we're hoping that there'll be an online conference coming out of this. It's been a really rich, warm, fascinating discussion. In support of that, I led 7 weekly focusing sessions for 3 members of the Education Council. So focusing is Jenlin's way of deepening experiencing in ways that are life-forwarding for us. So I've also written a paper that on how I've used an integration of Whitehead and Jenlin, integrating contemporary emotion theory to orient a community of practice that I co-founded for therapists and counselors. So I've submitted that paper to the Journal of Person-Centered and Experiential Psychotherapies, and the reviewers have got back to me, and I'll be working at trying to meet their requests. And then also Greg and I we're going to apply to this process exploration series to do 2 pop-up session on this intersection that will include experiential components. We've had a workshop submission accepted for the International Focusing Conference in Vienna in June of this year, so we'll be doing that in person. We're going to submit we're going to do a workshop for the International Focusing Institute, excuse me, in this area. I'm so excited. And we're about to submit an abstract for presentation. I think, I'm doing one with both of us, and Greg will do one on his own for the International Whitehead Conference in China in July. And Greg may be there to present in person. I'll be online. And then we're super excited that Chris and Dr. McDaniel have approached us. They're really enriching the foundation program with interactive options, and they've approached us to explore the possibility of including experiential processes in that would involve this crossing of Genlin and Whitehead. So in conclusion, also Greg's going to work up that paper and perhaps other ones to submit. There's other papers we're thinking about. So in conclusion, I'm just so grateful to the Cobb Institute, to this program. It's been life transforming for me. I'd like to thank the faculty and all of my fellow students, as well as the little discussion group that I facilitated with Ronnie and Nelson and George. Thank you so much.
Bill, thank you very much. As you can tell, listening to Bill, his Springboard project is really taking off, and most of it is in the air as it left the springboard and will be occurring over the rest of the year and the year to come. Bill, fantastic work. I really appreciate what you're doing here.
Thank you so much, Chris. Thank you.
You're welcome. Next up is Monty Johnson. Monty had an amazing year last year, and he managed to transform that into a Springboard project. So Monty, I'll hand this over to you now, and look forward to hearing about it.
Thank you. I'm just going to echo Bill's comments of gratitude, finding this community and being part of the classes and the learning community, connecting with the faculty. It's really deepened my understanding of process and also just how to work with these concepts and this philosophy in a faith community. Emmanuel Lutheran, which is in the north side of Chicago. It's been in the city for now, it's 173 years. We'll be celebrating or having a cake this Sunday to celebrate that anniversary. It's a liturgical congregation. It's a very traditional organ, choir, all that stuff. It seems like you'd walk in, you feel like you're in a Catholic setting. It's an Evangelical Lutheran Church in America congregation. So how to live into process, how to embody the process philosophy in a congregation is. I got started with approval from the congregation to do a sabbatical, which was around the theme of eco-theology, and fairly quickly beginning to take classes with John Cobb Institute, broadened to eco-civilization, and trying to work to find other interlocutors in the congregation. They were not very interested in concrescence and non-duality and such things like that, philosophy. But I do find a great deal of enthusiasm just applying process concepts to exegesis, to the preaching, just last this past Sunday, I was able to use some of the things we read from Rabbi Artson on kind of evolution as part of an exploration of epiphany and how we see God's grace unfolding all around us in a way that contrasts starkly with Stephen Miller's iron law of power. We have instead a golden rule of love. Other kinds of concept, speaking about God through the framework of love and non-unilateral power, or working against the omnis these are all the things that can come through preaching. Though part of in the sabbatical also began to explore just the natural world. Did some backpacking at Isle Royale. I went up to Banff in Canada. I spent about 3 weeks in the UK and 1 week at Iona in Scotland. Did some work just exploring some of their natural kind of wilderness areas. But certainly Celtic theology was a kind of thread that I drew upon. Also, when I was at Iona, Brian McLaren was there and did a presentation on the Bible as a collection of indigenous stories, kind of trying to extract it from the domination, colonization, empire kind of language that has overlain it. And so just finding a convergence between process and indigenous wisdom and Celtic theology has helped me as I try to infuse the process in my congregation. I'm really seeing the liturgy, the language we use in worship, as a real place to experiment. We've used some of Iona, a brief order for confession, for instance, that I think was powerful. We're going to be doing some wild church kinds of activities this summer, some camping kinds of things, where we'll try to explore themes around process. Going to be using Tom Ord's God Can't for Lent, a small group discussion. I think also Bob Mesley's basic introduction to process theology seems like might also be very accessible exploration. Also looking at other kind of indigenous stories and resources. Two Old Women, for instance, is one of the stories that we'll do. Anyway, my time is up. Thank you very much. The story continues.
Thank you, Monty, for sharing that. I thought the adventures you had last year were amazing. And I think you've got a beautiful way of bringing them and what you learned from them into your church, into your community. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you.
Next up is Johannes Jurg, I think joining us from Germany. I hope he's with us. He's probably a tired man, as he has a very new member to his family, just a few weeks old, I think, Johannes. So congratulations on that. And he took a deep dive into ontological processing and its closure. So Johannes, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Chris. And hi, everybody. Good evening from Germany. Yeah, all right. And the topic of ontology to me is so all-encompassing that I have a real hard time to even get started with it somewhere. So I could start saying, for example, that whenever and however I start thinking about ontology, I am biased right from the start, and that there are unexamined ontological presuppositions already baked into any mode of thinking by necessity. That's one reason why I'm not even so much interested in certain ontological claims or ontological positions, What I want to understand and explore is the ontological endeavor itself. So the paper I wrote is a meta perspective on ontology, or rather an examination of the act of doing ontology. From a process relational systems mode of thinking, ontology is certainly not about what reality ultimately is. From a genuinely process relational perspective, ontology itself certainly is a process. So ontology is rather ontological processing, an activity, a mode of relating. And in doing ontology, it's not only nature relating to nature, but the relating itself is the very essence of nature. The very act of doing ontology raises the issue in question in the first place and is cast back upon itself. So the ultimate level of ontological understanding would be to achieve that the process of understanding understands itself. And in this sense, the universe could be pictured as a huge process of self-understanding, so to speak. And we are one example of this. And the understanding of understandings certainly is a very tricky thing to achieve. Self-referentiality is a big hurdle to overcome conceptually. And I argue it's bluntly impossible to escape it, since in an existence that ultimately exists out of itself, circularity is the very foundational principle of existence on all levels. And system theory provides the conceptual tools to deal with this self-referentiality in productive ways. From this epistemological outset of the paper, I develop it into a systems theory of cognition, basically, to enable an understanding of understanding. It is necessary to put thinking into perspective, to put the cognitive system of a human being into the larger context of the human system as a whole and what it means to be human. And I argue here that there is required sort of Copernican revolution in our human self-understanding. From the perspective of the Earth appears to be the center of the cosmos. And this shaped the geocentric understanding of the cosmos for centuries. And with respect to our self-conception, our self-understanding, we still live in a pre-Copernican cosmos, so to speak. From the perspective of thinking, again, thinking appears to be very, very central to our self-conception. Yet I argue that thinking is merely the viewpoint of our self-reflection and anything but central to being human. And to overcome this geocentric perspective, it was necessary to develop a model of the solar system and embed the geocentric perspective into a larger systems understanding of the solar system and so on. And in the same way, the systems model of human cognition is possible. And that can sort out the relationship of thoughts, perception, emotions, and interoceptive feeling. And this system theory of cognition links also to my vivid personal experience and shows that that thoughts are not meaningful in and of themselves. Thoughts are always linked to some emotional charge, to a felt state of being. And it's this felt sense of being what it's actually about, but we are not aware of it most of the time. We are on the level of thinking, on the level of thought, but we have a hard time to relate to the deeper meaning felt sense of our thoughts. So the end of my ontological story is that even if we get it all conceptually right, it would be a circular, and it would hardly be very satisfying to our felt sense of being. Conceptual understanding is only a superficial level of self-understanding, and a deeply satisfying level of self-understanding, ontological closure, has to occur involving the foundational realm of our embodied sense of being. And to achieve this, conceptual philosophical work is not sufficient. Here, first-person practices like meditation come into play. And I believe that fully understanding conceptually what spiritual practices actually do and what they are will dramatically advance the cultural popularity and also the personal success of such practices. They can be enhanced and be performed better. And it's my goal to contribute to this advancement of deep self-knowledge. That's the goal of my paper. Yeah, and thank you very much for the opportunity of the course, and yeah, for your company in my own process, in process philosophy. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Johannes. I know this is just the beginning of a big piece of work on your part, so good luck with developing it through the rest of the year, and thank you so much for sharing this with us today. Next up is Katie McNeil. Katie, the title of her springboard project is The Ontology of the Divine, Sensing the Superject. Katie.
All right, so I'm Katie McNeil. I'm an artist and experimental animator. I've really enjoyed learning with all of you in this certificate program. Part of what has drawn me to Whitehead's process philosophy or process relational thought is that I feel it gives language to a sense that I previously was depicting in my art. So if you're familiar with my prior animation, I created this visual language of how do I depict these kinds of immaterial sensations as tangible extensions of the body. And so in my springboard project, Sensing the Superject, I'm looking at expanding these ideas. So the carousel is that sense of your imagination. What if it were outside your body? And particularly, it's these ideas of shadow and future hands. And so with this, it is, looking to the past, looking to the future. And so I looked at them then through the lens of the primordial nature of the divine and the consequent nature of the divine. And so in expanding my work for this new animation in progress, I have these, the other types of wavelengths that we experience. How do we experience these? I've been in dialogue with a few neuroscientists on this, and then I've created additional types of diagrams for how does an individual experience these lures from the divine? How do we experience what happens when actual occasions perish into the consequent nature? And so as I progressed through my work, this was part of Dr. Davis's course. And so in the essay I wrote about the ontology of the divine, part of it was how does the divine experience all of this as well? And so in the center, you see this kind of energy wavelength of the body, and below is the consequent hands that are prehending and retaining these actual occasions. And then up above, you see these primordial hands giving these lures for feeling these potentials out to each actual occasion. This is not the final animation. It's just a very rough version I made. So in Jay and Kathleen's course, I went into a character study, which is an oil painting with some collage to develop how I aesthetically wanted my animation to be. And so this painting is called Zen Zoot, and I'm working through these fleeting moments of beauty that are like a lure to continue experiencing, but then, they get just stored into memory and you seek them again. And that to me was part of these moments of concrescence where these actual occasions perish. You have these succession of selves, all of these different things are happening and you feel it really strongly. And so I also worked on these diagrams for how do I depict this at the bigger picture. So this is, if you're familiar with animation, I use Toon Boom Harmony. This is my rig here on the right, and a few other sort of experiments in character design for how do I really show all of these things. So my animation is still very much in progress. I have a 1-minute clip for you today. And so then this work will continue. I will be sharing at this upcoming symposium this animation along with my previous work and speak to how animated works and this hybrid animation technique I use are part of a method for depicting inner experiences as these tangible visualizations, and how this in itself is part of a creative process of becoming as well.
Katie, thank you so much for sharing that. I mean, to find dry Whiteheadian terms tangibly coming alive with such visual beauty and glory and impact is a fantastic avenue to bring these thoughts to people. I really love your work. Thank you for sharing it with us, and good luck with it.
Thank you.
Okay, and next up is Ronnie Schwartz. And Ronnie Schwartz did an amazing project with a high school LGBTQ group. And she experienced some extraordinary changes in herself, I think it's fair to say, as well as seeing changes occurring within the group. So, Ronnie, I'll hand it over to you now.
Thank you. At the beginning of the spring semester 2025, I volunteered to be an adult mentor for the Gender Sexuality Alliance, which is an inclusive student club at Basehor-Linwood High School. I participated in the school district's adult volunteer mentoring program since 2021, but that was at an elementary school. The GSA club sponsoring teacher told me this club was having trouble getting organized and determining how to use their time. She did mention that they had recently retreated from some of the advocacy activities they had done for safety concerns. The school administration is committed to preventing bullying of any student, but the surrounding community where this school exists is conservative and not overtly supportive of their LGBTQAI plus community members. My desire to mentor in this club was in part to impress on this small group of students that there were people in the larger community who may not understand their challenges, but would be there to be supportive of them. The sponsoring teacher told me the students were happy to have an adult member, but that said, these teens also have a personal right and responsibility to be skeptical and cautious of me, a straight retired woman from the community, becoming part of their teenage group. When school is in session, the club meets twice a month for 30 minutes. At the first meeting I attended, I observed, in fact, this group was very disorganized. One student dominated the conversation. The rest of the students kind of sat in their own silos with headphones on. And so at the next couple of groups, I used the skills that I had learned in my career to indeed control the narrative, take control of the discussion of the group. And some students participated in that discussion and others seemed quietly resentful. So as my coursework continued through these spring and summer, I became increasingly uneasy with controlling the narrative of the Students' Club as their mentor. It felt unethical to me to step into a student group and take over their meetings and to make my springboard project work. So controlling the narrative increasingly felt antithetical to what Whitehead taught about potentiality, interconnectedness, intensity, and an open future. I began feeling uncomfortable with using coercive influence in this setting as the adult mentor. As my Whitehead philosophy classes continued, I realized the students could no longer be my project. My project needed to be my own education and change. I became my springboard project. I learned in classes that the cosmos is not haphazard emergence, but also not predestined by a God sitting outside nature. I learned that this process forward can be both magical and messy. If my controlling nature cannot learn to tolerate what is messy, I might miss what is magical in the process of experiencing life. I learned the consequent nature of God that listens and notices and remembers. I wondered if I could be more consequent, more observant, purposefully present, and a better listener of the interaction between students in the club. I realized that if the students asked me for assistance in what to do in their club, I simply didn't know them well enough to be able to provide wise guidance. I learned of the primordial nature of God that lures the cosmos towards beauty, the nature that rejects coercion and provides possibilities. I wondered if I could reject the urge to control and coerce and replace that with providing support and possibilities and letting the future be open and up to the students. During the meetings this fall semester, I did sit quietly and observe. The students did not request my opinions or my help, and I did not offer it. I did bring art supplies because the students like to do art in their support time. And I also brought snacks. And what I noticed at the last meeting is when I moved the snacks from a table close to the teacher out to where the students were congregating, they actually did stand at the table and talk with each other and interact with each other, which I had not seen much of before. The first meeting of GSA this semester is tomorrow. I have no idea what the semester holds or how this group of teens will evolve. For me to allow these students to grow and change without my control requires trust on my part. Trust that the cosmos is good and leads towards goodness. Trust that the lure of God or the divine will provide possibilities for these students to care for themselves with and each other with compassion. In a world dominated by top-down government, business, and church, trust in a God who lures and does not control is not an easy task for me. I once, as a conservative Christian, thought trust could be prayed and believed into existence. I now think trust is lived into existence. From my certificate program classes, I now know the students in that group will be presented with possibilities influenced by the past, but not controlled by what has been. My hope is the students and I, in our own ways, become aware of what arises as possible and where those possibilities might take us in the future. My deep thanks to all of the instructors in this certificate program. It has been obviously a worldview changing experience for me. Thank you.
Ronnie, thank you so much for sharing. I find it deeply moving. And to me, it's a testament of how process thinking changes us and gives us the ability to change the world. And when you said that your springboard project became you rather than something that you were imposing on a group of kids in a high school, I thought that was such a moment of transformation. It was beautiful to hear. Thank you so much for sharing it with us today. And moving on here, George Strawn is next. George did a fascinating study of process and programming, computer programming. So, George, I'll turn it over to you now.
Thank you, Chris. As my Python used to say, now for something entirely different. As a computer scientist, I wanted to relate computer science to process philosophy with a particular application toward a different way to think about artificial consciousness. I asked Richard to share my screen so I don't fumble, and he's right on the job. The article that I wrote is now titled Process, Programs, and Consciousness. Next slide, please. Anybody who struggles with Whitehead knows that you've got to get used to unique definitions, which are metaphysical, not biological, often stretch or redefine common meanings. Words such as organism, society, living, consciousness are all given new, very interesting meanings. The Whitehead world is composed of prehending organisms, not matter in motion. I wish everybody could understand that. And the thing that's important that isn't covered in my work is all organisms have subjective experience as well as conscious experience. I'm not claiming that computer programs have subjective experience, so this is an objective view on part of process programming. Next slide, please. Let's talk about process just briefly. You Whitehead scholars will know that actual entities are the brief foundational organisms and that societies are groups of actual organisms with a constant common theme. such as the stone or rocks that we heard about previously. Living societies have a metaphysical definition as be any group of actual entities that exhibit novelty. A plant is a biological example. Living persons is any living society with a regnant subsociety that is a controlling subsociety, for example, a mammal with a nervous system. Conscious persons, again, metaphysically speaking, are living persons whose regnant subsociety can reflect on its own experience. For example, a waking human, but although I've given biological examples, now we shift to the artificial. Next slide, please. Programs. Executing a computer program routine is like the objective part of an actual entity. It is a process. It's very quick. It prehends subjects, superjects. Its concrescence is controlled by an eternal object, and it creates a superject. In computer terms, it has input. Its execution is controlled by computer code, and it creates outputs. Execution of a complex program containing many computer routines is like the objective part of a living person, again by Whitehead's definition. Examples such as a flight simulator or a pilot operating a flight simulator, or indeed an airplane flying itself, are all examples of living persons, metaphysically speaking. Well, will we soon be talking about executing conscious programs? We might ask, what is the objective part of consciousness? Next slide, please. Nobody, to my knowledge, can really define consciousness. We all know it when we feel it, but it's hard to come to natural consciousness, much let alone artificial consciousness. So perhaps Whitehead gives us a unique consideration of this consideration. Metaphysical, again, not phenomenological, not biological. It doesn't ask, what does consciousness feel like? But it does raise the question, what are the object conditions that, from Whitehead's definition, that would make consciousness, in his sense, implementable as a computer program? This provides a novel approach to artificial intelligence that I think computer scientists would be wise to consider as we struggle with the interesting question of consciousness. Next slide. Final slide, please. As with all my fellow students, many thanks to the Process Certificate Program, teachers, fellow students, everyone else who enabled. I do feel like I now have a freshman certificate in process. I wish there were 6 more courses that I could pursue a sophomore certificate in process. The article that this talk refers to will appear in the IEEE magazine IT Professional as an illustration of a process philosophy application for computing, such as I've talked about. Perhaps the article could also appear in a process journal as a computing application for process. I thank you very much.
George, thank you very much for sharing this. I mean, I think this conversation between computer science, artificial intelligence, consciousness, Whitehead's understanding of concrescence and prehensions is a vital one that more and more people need to get involved in. And I think you're getting that discussion going here. Thank you very much for sharing this with us today. Okay, next up is Nelson Thurman. Nelson's Springboard project is entitled Creating Welcoming Outdoor Spaces at a Church Guided by Concepts of Ecological Civilization. Nelson, over to you.
Thanks, Chris. So I'm going to use slides because a lot of this is visual. So my project brings together elements of Church of the Wild, along with Whitehead's process philosophy and elements of eco-civilization. For this particular church, which is located in the Washington, D.C. suburbs. For those of you who are not familiar with Church of the Wild, it invites people to engage in the natural world around them. So participants will wander outdoors, connect with nature at their own pace, And then they get back together and share that experience with others. At its heart, Wild Church is a call to change the way we think about the natural world around us and to discover the sacred or divine in nature, however we choose to view it. It has a lot of elements that tie in with process philosophy. So for those of you who remember back in the first class where we had the tree metaphor, well, the project has a strong foundation in Whitehead's philosophy and the foundations of that. It is pretty much out on the limb. So the key elements of Whitehead's philosophy and ecological civilization that anchor the project include seeing the interconnectedness of the world around us, recognizing that we are part of that natural world and not separate from it, seeing all of nature as alive and worthy of reverence and dignity, and I would argue, nodding to Dennis, including rocks, answering the invitation to be co-creators in the way we practice, attend, imagine, and act communally with the world around us. So the project itself invites us to see nature as something we're part of and not something we just visit from time to time. And its focus is on shifting from a mentality where we consider ourselves stewards over nature, controlling nature, to more of one of being partners with the natural world. The project itself will expand native plant areas that are already present in the church. It will also create places for people to sit, commune, and interact with both each other and the natural world. We envision stations of nature that will encourage people to get out, interact, and experience the divine and sacred around us in ways that don't happen inside a building. And it will open up to outdoor gatherings. Now, the first part of the project was to start with plans to expand those existing native plant areas, and it came to a screeching halt early last spring whenever two large oaks that you see up here in the northern corner died suddenly from a fungus. So it took us about a year it's taking us about a year to remove the trees and deal with the fungus, and so we're just now gonna start planting this coming spring. That delay it challenged us, but it challenged us to consider what we just said we were going to do. If we're going to take our commitment to be partners with nature seriously, then we need to listen to what nature's telling us. So it gave us time to listen to the land, the plants, and others for what could evolve. And one thing was the realization that we needed a completely new plan for planting and new designs. For instance, this now sunny open space has given us opportunities for a wider variety of pollinating plants and more places for people to interact. At the same time, the stations of nature took on a bigger focus. So we have selected places around the church that highlight unique aspects of nature. And we use brief descriptions and questions to invite people to wander through these stations at their own pace and learn more about nature and consider what each station reveals about the Creator and our connections to each other. And we expect these stations will become the basis for wild church gatherings for our particular church. The interesting thing is we also realize that none of this is static. The stations of nature are going to tell stories that change as the seasons and plants change. And for now, the place where these oaks used to stand will become a gathering place for people to reflect and dream and tell their stories. And I would say right now, this project is just now jumping off its springboard, and the dreams have just started, and there's stories waiting to be told. And I'm going to close by saying thank you to all the faculty, to everyone, particularly those who engaged in the chats, and to the Sunday study group for all your words of encouragement and words of challenge for inspiring this project. And with that, I will close.
Nelson, thank you so much for sharing the work you're doing. I love the feeling that church is not something that happens indoors, but is something that you can go out of the church into. And I think that experience you will be bringing to people, even to passers-by, as they go past your church, will feel there's something different happening there. Good luck with it over the year, and thanks for sharing it with us today. Next up is Ying He. The title of his springboard is Dreams as a Process.
Yeah, thank you. So for this springboard project, as Dream as Process, I was trying to explore Carl Jung's dream theory in relation with process philosophy. However, I was only starting to understand both of these two theories. And I wish I have committed more time and energy into this, but situations didn't allow. So here I am with a very small piece of thing I wrote. I would understand it more like initial ideas of this dreamy process. Yeah. So in this piece of writing and thinking process, I've been understanding dreams, of course, as actual occasions, which are grounded in experiences, in becoming and in meaning, and it comprehends the past experiences, including conscious and unconscious ones, including archetypal forms, and creating occasions or conditions for future events, might including like psychic events consciously and unconsciously, also dreaming. So it's more like an ongoing psychic process, as in a way of this unconscious material is actively organized into consciousness and shaping the future. And at the same time, the dreaming or the characters in the dreams or the imageries in the dreams are also regarded as entities. They arise, they feel, they act, they disappear. But they experience and their influences persist in the dream and outside of the dream world. And then some figures or some imageries are quite archetypal forms, or they're archetypes. They are, I understood them as more like enduring patterns that is not with a fixed content. I also tried to, I think it's debatable, but I was trying to compare it to what eternal entities mean in process philosophy, because they provide these patterns of possibilities rather than a determined form. And also it shapes how the experience could take place without really saying, like, or dictating the very exact content. Yeah, and it's also very influenced and colored by personal histories, like my personal histories and situational context. So with this process of writing and thought, I managed to spend more time with some of my recurring dreams, which are a super fascinating experience for me as well. And I especially worked with several recurring motifs. I have been taking notes of them, writing letters to them, and also like drafting a little bit. I'm trying to send this picture. I was sketching a little bit of the dreams as well as a way of interacting with them. I was also hoping so much that process philosophy could somehow, I mean, like in a way enter my dream, but I think since it's still the very beginning, I've also felt like my mind or my thoughts are so overwhelmed with the cognitive knowledge of what is process philosophy, and I'm not really experiencing it. But still, I'd like to share some of the archetypes appeared in the dream. So the reoccurring plot in the dream is always like I'm running, I'm chased after by somebody, and then some kind of help was offered, and I was always doubtful, and I kind of somehow rejected the offer. So the figures who were pursuing me, for me, I experienced them more like it's a lot to explain, but I eventually experienced them as the residues of the traditional and authoritarian systems that I was raised up, and then the culture I grew up with has very strong tendencies on or values on authority, and I learned to seek approval and to act in a correct way, as if there is something like a fixed answer for all the questions. And this orientation also shaped how I make my decisions and how I weave my relationships. And in these dreams, those people who were after me, they sometimes appear as soldiers wearing ancient armor. So for me, it's more like how they were kind of persisting with this like ancient or old ways of living, imposing some demands or pursue me, pressuring me down, some kind of history or memories, the cultural expectations that they were like somehow prehended or grasped by the dream as actual occasions. Another thing was the help I got, but I eventually rejected. So one of the help was this compassionate Buddha called Guan Yin, who showed up and kind of tries to protect me, but I was, thank you. Is that the time cue? Yeah, anyway, I was like, yeah, I was more asking like, instead of asking, I don't know, instead of understanding what is happening, I was asking, is this real? Can you prove to me that you are real? And this is some help I could trust. Yeah, but coming to an end, I see how each of the dream functions like this actual occasion in a way that they inherit something from the past, but at the same time offering some lure of the deeper creativity, I would say, that is providing more opportunities and potentials for what could be me in this process of individualization. Yeah, that's it. And thank you so much for everything, for the faculty. And also, I have to apologize that I didn't get time to be live online so often, but I really enjoyed the readings and the recordings, and looking forward to get involved more with process philosophy. I feel like now I don't know too much to read anything yet, but thank you so much. Really nice, and enjoyed your presentations. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I mean, you brought, in a way I'd never imagined, you brought process thinking and process terminology into dreams, or dreams into process thinking and terminology. I'm not sure which way round it was going, probably both directions. And you enliven that whole interaction with wonderful stories about the dreams you were experiencing and how those things were playing out as important actual entities, actual occasions, experiences in your life. So it's a fascinating bit of work that you've shared with us today. Thank you so much. Okay, and now, Zhenbao, we finally get to you. Zhenbao's Springboard has the fascinating title, Meditation as the Methodology of Process Philosophy. Zhenbao, we're looking forward to hearing from you. Take it away.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you. It's a great pleasure for me to finally finish my springboard project and be able to present it to you. It was a great experience. I would like to share my screen. I prepared a PPT. It's a slight change. It's the methodological significance for meditation for process philosophy. This is the result of an exploration for more than 10 years. I was diagnosed. I was a lawyer and was diagnosed to have lymphoma cancer 13 years ago. In order to heal myself, I started to do research and practice of meditation. And I'm very much inspired by Taoism, Confucianism, Buddhism. And then I was thinking, is there some theory that is similar in the Western culture? And with that, I found process philosophy. As we know, there are some fundamental arguments of process philosophy. That is, the cosmos is not made up of bits of data matter, but of job experience. And the creativity is the universal universals. And characterizing ultimate matter of fact. And also the ultimate metaphysical principle is advanced from disjunction to conjunction, creating a novel entity other than the entities given in disjunction. But the point is, how do I know? And so it's about the methodological problem. And I argue that first of all, to know is to experience and to become. So it's not simply knowing something that is fully abstract. And also, then I will go to a little bit on the methodological significance of meditation for process philosophy. So first, I'm very much inspired by Mo Zhongshan, the Chinese philosopher. He said, while the Western philosophy focuses on objectivity or knowledge, by contrast, the Chinese philosophy with Taoism, Confucianism, and Buddhism as its main pillars focuses on subjectivity. And especially in comparison with Taoism and Buddhism, Confucianism defines subjectivity as inner morality. So according to Whitehead, the true method of philosophical construction is to bring a scheme of ideas, the best that one can, and unflinchingly to explore the interpretation experience in terms of that scheme. So the focus, according to this, the focus is to know, to bring a scheme of ideas. But at the same time, Whitehead argued that the whole cosmos is made up of experience. So it's a link between to know and to experience. However, experience as the fundamental building blocks of the universe is, of course, different from our daily experience, but maybe not that different. They are related to each other, and but what is the relationship between these between them? This is a key question, I think. According to Whitehead, the essence of an actual entity consists solely in the fact that it is a prehending thing. That means it simply cannot prehending. And prehension include physical prehension and conceptual prehensions. And with that, it leads to satisfaction. So that means I'm arguing that interpretation is actually conceptual prehension. And that means it leads to satisfaction and intensification of experience. I will not go into details with this chat. That means with the process philosophy, it serves as a bridge between the objectivity or knowledge and the subjectivity, that is morality, because it's about a relationship. How should we deal with our relationship with ourselves, with other people, and with the nature? So that's also a bridge between the West and the East. And the experience as the fundamental building blocks of the universe, I would say, is the experience that has no subject, no object, and no content. And nevertheless, it continuously intensifies by itself. That means it's an inherent process of intensification by itself. And this intensification experience manifests itself in two forms or in two directions. That is, first of all, physically it's structured in a more and more complicated and diversified way, and mentally the experience by it is more and more intensified and diversified. And both support each other in a dynamic way, and the experience keeps intensifying. And that constitutes the evolution of consciousness. That's also the evolution of the cosmos.
Zhenbao, I'm going to have to interrupt and ask you to bring this to a conclusion fairly soon, if you can.
Yeah, okay. And I think this leads to a theory of sickness and healing. And I healed myself from the tumor and also other health problems in the past 13 years. And I'm doing now this to help other people. So I think the practice of meditation is simply to make this process happen and to maximize itself. And of course, meditation can be in many different forms: sitting, standing, jogging, eating, reading, writing, talking, and also all these cultural acts. Yeah. And for this, I would finalize with this circulation of energy. I think it's most important, which is based on the Taoist understanding of life and the cosmos. And we can experience it in our personal life, that the energy goes up in the back and goes down in the front, so that it constitutes the dynamic relationship between the body and the spiritual development. And I think this fact is not fully understood in the Western culture and also not in Buddhism. That's why. This circulation perfectly integrate the flux and the permanence, and also it allows creativity to happen. So finally, I'm arguing that our life is a process of perpetual creating instead of perpetual perishing. Of course, this is a very bold argument, but I think only with this bold argument can we match the force of artificial intelligence, so that future of the mankind is possible. So I will stop now, and I hope I can share my paper in near future with all of you. And in the end, I very much thanks Chris, Jay, and all the other instructors for their instruction and also allowing me to finish my project in a very later time. Thank you.
Jimbo, thank you very much for sharing this with us. I mean, your integration of Western understanding, Western philosophy, traditional Chinese ways of understanding the world, and putting them together in the context of meditation and what it can practically do is inspiring. And I think your work is very important. Thank you so much for sharing it with us today.
Thank you.
And now I'd like to end this section of the graduation and just open it up to the faculty and ask them for a quick response to the presentations they've heard and anything else that they'd like to say to the graduating students today. So, Jay, if you're here, perhaps you could kick this off with just a few words to everybody.
Well, I know that all of the faculty are thinking to themselves, wow, and what an incredible cohort of friends. Students doesn't quite seem like the right word. Co-journeyers. And you've all done such a wonderful job, and you really give me, and I imagine all of us, actually great hope to see the variety, the diversity of ways in which this, our small movement, can make a difference and is making a difference. So just a big thank you and congratulations to everyone.
Thank you, Jay. Okay. Josh, are you here with us?
Yes, I'm here.
If you'd like to say a word, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. This was my first time teaching a course with the Institute, and this was such a great experience. And I also want to thank all of the students too. I share Jay's sentiment as well, that I don't know if students is quite the right word, because I certainly learned a lot from everyone, and I was so impressed with all of the final papers in the class and all the ideas that were shared. And I was also impressed by the diversity of students too in my class, that some people had very little, if any, philosophical background, and then there was others who had done PhD work in process philosophy with studying Whitehead. And this was such an enriching experience for myself, and I hope that I can continue to be a part of the education here.
Thanks, Josh. It was great to have you as part of the team on the faculty this year for the certificate program. We all appreciate it. Thank you. Leslie King, if you're here, would you like to say a quick word?
Yes, but I see that Bob Mesley has his hand up, so I'll defer to
sure.
him, and then I can chime in.
Okay, for sure. Bob.
I was astonished by the diversity, by the interdisciplinary character. So many of you are doing things I could just never begin to do with process relational thinking, and that is just fantastic. So thanks to all of you for what you're doing, how you're expanding the range of process relational thinking and into just all kinds of new directions that I know I couldn't do. So I'm very grateful to all of you. So thanks a lot. Great work.
Thank you, Bob. Leslie.
Just very impressed with the way each of you began with your strengths and your lived experience in order to really draw in process thought and then allow it to unfurl in unrepeatable ways. So it's been a real honor to listen to each of the projects presented. Thanks to you all.
Thanks, Leslie. Okay. Mary Elizabeth, then I'll hand it over to you again.
So much to hear, so much to see, so much to feel. Thanks to all of you. You've done such a wonderful job opening the world to us and opening ourselves to us.